Welcome to MindShock. This is Bruce McGuire,
And Brad Michaels.
and today we're going to be going over the evolution of horror movies. Now, Brad here is a horror movie reviewer and expert for quite a few years, and he's going to be walking us through his journey of watching countless horror movies, and we'll talk about the impact they have on society as generations change and possibly some occult influence and various extreme conspiracies in typical Mindshock fashion. As always, if you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms. And make sure you like and follow our Facebook page for exclusive updates. And you could also check us out on Twitter, Reddit, and Patreon. All right, Brad. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I started watching horror movies when I was about, let's say, 3 to 5 years old. I started watching. It's all I watch ever, and that's my favorite genre, obviously. So
Would you say you're a bit obsessed?
a little bit, a little bit. My father, he was born watching horror movies. My brother, me. So
Whoa, they had a horror movie
eventually,
playing in the delivery room when your dad was born?
of course.
Whoa, what kind of times are these? Wait, did they even have television sets? How old is your dad?
I'm trying to remember first movie that really scared my dad when he was a kid was I think She Demons or something like that. I believe that's what it was, a black and white old movie, and he said there was this doctor who distorted women's faces, and there was a scene where it showed one of the woman's face, and my dad he said it frightened him for a long time. That was one of the scariest movies. But another movie was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. My father said was one of his earliest, scariest movies that he saw at a drive-in movie theater, which I agree. I think that movie was pretty crazy.
Yeah, especially in
And that
1974 when that came out, it wasn't society wasn't like it is today.
it,
Desensitized to violence and horror. Like back then it was revolutionary. Some people actually credit that movie with kind of kickstarting the horror genre.
I would say, I mean, it was very realistic, gory, violent, and definitely, definitely a turn in horror movies there.
Yeah,
So,
before that, have you seen any of the old black and white Hammer House horror movies? The old Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, like the classics of horror?
of course. And I remember my father telling me how great those movies were then. Obviously, when you watch them now, you see the difference, I guess, in quality and practical effects. But then it scared a lot of people because it was like new to that era. The
Well, you know what? A couple of them still stand up pretty good. I mean, you've seen Nosferatu from the 20s.
of course, they all have that
That one is still,
atmosphere. The
yeah,
atmosphere is what
that
creeps.
one is still creepy. And you know what's weird? Certain old horror movies, they're scarier because they're old, and then different horror movies, they're not scary because they're old. So it's weird. It kind of depends on the movie and how it was made and because when you're watching something that's kind of you're not used to, I guess, like the really old film with the decay, it's like decayed film and things like that. It's just creepy because it's also when it's that when the original negatives aren't preserved well, it can make it seem more realistic because you don't know if it's real or not because it looks like it was this old film that was found somewhere.
Of course, definitely, and it's definitely the atmosphere, especially in a lot of the older movies. That's what gets you. It's not the practical effects. Obviously, you look at it now and it looks so fake with bats on strings, ghosts. But the atmosphere is what puts you in that mood, that terrifying mood.
Before we trace the evolution of horror movies and subgenres, why do you think people are attracted to horror movies? Because horror movies, it's probably one of the most, if not the most profitable genre across all of movie history. I mean, now with the big budget comic book movies, I mean, that aside, if you look at all of history, it seems like horror movies were some of the most bankable movies because for some reason people just really want to go to horror movies. Why do you think that is?
It's the fear. It's the adrenaline rush of being scared of something and getting put into that atmosphere at the theaters, and all these. the movies growing up, they all have different fears, and that's whatever you're afraid of the most gives you that adrenaline rush, and that's what I feel attracts you to these to see these films. People love being scared, even though they close their eyes, most of them, they want to go back and be scared.
Well, I think it's important to note also there's I guess you'd call it a certain contingent of horror movie fans that kind of just watch horror movies for fun because they think they're funny and they're not really scared of anything, but
Well,
it's
I
more
you know, yeah, I understand. For me, when I go see a very scary movie, the scarier, the gorier, I kind of laugh because it's like, yeah, awesome, keep it coming, like when the horror movie does something very well, like the creep factor, like I love it, most people cover their eyes, but I look and laugh, other people scream. I'm like, yes. you know
But why do you think the horror comedy genre came to be? Because that was kind of, when I was a kid, that kind of threw me off. Like when I was watching Toxic Avenger and some of those movies, I was like, wait a second, it's kind of weird that this genre even exists, right? Because if you want to watch a comedy, you watch a comedy. If you want to watch a horror movie, you watch a horror movie. And so the horror comedy kind of, it was one of the first subgenres that seemed almost oxymoronical.
yeah, I guess it's just to broaden the audience, to get more people to watch. I mean, for me, I don't really like too much comedy in my horror movies. If I want to go see a horror movie, I want a serious, creepy atmosphere, a lot of scares. But I understand throwing a little comedy in there to lighten the mood a little bit. Some movies, they mess with that too much and it ruins the atmosphere.
All right, so
Um,
let's trace the evolution of horror movies. So, of course, horror movies were some of the first movies ever made, even in the silent era. We're not going to go too much into those, but once you had sound with movies, of course, sound is a big component. Some people would actually argue that sound is the most important aspect of horror film to maintain that atmosphere, not just music, but like someone footsteps coming or something being a body being dragged or like people breathing, like all those, the sound, without the sound you wouldn't be able to be immersed in that movie environment. So it would be, I mean, imagine watching a horror movie with no sound. It's really not that scary.
yeah,
So
with the sound, definitely adds to the atmosphere.
yeah, so once movies had sound, we'll start tracing it there. For me personally, I kind of got into horror movies more with the slasher films. So
Michael Myers, yeah.
well, Friday the 13th was my was my series
Was
back in
it?
the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, Friday the
Okay.
13th and a bunch of different slashers. And in the 90s, you saw the revival with the Scream movies where they started getting meta. And then for some people, that was a big turnoff. For other people, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air because you had the typical horror tropes, which is a lot of so-called cerebral or high intellectuals that watch horror movies. Their constant complaints are the cliches of the genre. So once Scream came out, they kind of turned it on its head, and then a bunch of movies since then have attempted to do the same. But I think part of the fun of some of the old 80s and the 80s era, the late 70s, I guess you'd say all the way through the late 80s, possibly early 90s, people consider that kind of like the golden age of slashers, especially teen slasher type movies where young people just get killed.
Yeah.
And you had the audience, you're capturing a pretty big demographic because you have the younger kids who think it's cool. It's almost like a rite of passage to be sneaking into like an R-rated horror movie when you're a kid at the
Of
movie
course.
theater. And but all the way up through, even adults have fun watching slasher movies. So you had a pretty big demographic that you could capture. And I think Friday the 13th for most people, that was the big one. Halloween was seminal as well, but people kind of I don't know, like I always seem to get from just from talking to people and movie critics and a bunch of different people that Friday the 13th is usually credited as being the first big one. Would you agree or disagree?
I disagree. I believe 1978 Halloween pretty much kicked off a slasher for me.
Yeah, no, it definitely that was definitely one of the big ones, but I don't know, just from everything I've seen, Friday the 13th kind of made it like took it to the next level, whereas Halloween just established it. But
No,
yeah,
you're right.
so in any case, that's kind of you always had the ghost movies. I mean, they were around forever. Then you had the zombie movies going all the way back to the original Night of the Living Dead,
Oh yeah.
and that one was pretty creepy too.
Oh,
And
definitely.
so it's kind of interesting how all these different filmmakers found a way to come up with all of these concepts that were vastly different. Because I mean, think about it: you got zombies, and then you got some teenager who wants to get revenge and starts killing people. I mean, those are very different concepts, but they're both pretty scary,
Yeah,
depending on
very.
how it was done. But the Friday the 13th series was it was almost like it introduced the camp factor.
Of
Like they
course,
were,
full blown
camp,
slasher.
yeah.
That's what that was. I mean, kill count was ridiculous.
Yeah, and they were kind of coming up with ridiculous ways to kill people. I mean, you had it was a bit over the top. I mean, it seemed even more over the top now than it was at the time because if you're people that haven't grown up in the 80s, they don't really know, but all of the 80s vibe that was considered normal in the 80s. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard for people to imagine kind of the previous generation or
In
two.
that era, man, there were so many slashers, so many that that was like the era for slasher movies. Ridiculous slasher movies.
Yeah, why do you think so? Even in the 70s though, there were a bunch vampire movies got kind of big. Cannibal movies were kind of big too in Italy actually. There was the whole 70s cannibal craze going up all the way through the 80s, and of course one of the most famous of those was Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, I would say that was ridiculous. That was
And I believe at the time that was the most banned movie in the world. It was banned in over 80 countries or something like that.
What about Faces of Death? Was that also banned? I mean, that was pretty bad. That was
See, that was I was more into the movies, not the documentary style or
documentaries. Yeah,
faux documentary. I think most of those were fake in the
reenacted.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think they would every now and then they would splice in some news footage of a real one, so then it kept everybody guessing. But that wasn't my genre. I'm not really into the snuff movie.
Wasn't really into that either, but
or
yeah,
even or even the fake snuff movies. That's too. What'd you think of the movie 8 millimeter? That was pretty disturbing, right?
Jack Nicholson, right?
No, 8 millimeter was Nick Cage.
Nick Cage. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. What did I say?
Jack
But
Nicholson.
I meant to say Nicolas Cage. But yeah, no, that movie was pretty dark. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was very,
Very
very
dark.
disturbing. Very
Very
disturbing.
dark.
And then you have all the movies made about serial killers.
Of
Those
course.
are those are also highly disturbing, especially the true story ones. I mean, those are rough. I mean, even Texas Chainsaw Massacre that was based on the true story of Ed Gein,
Yes.
who killed people and wore their skin and things like that with a Leatherface character. When you don't know that, it's less scary. When you know that it's based on real characters, I mean, that's even more disturbing, right?
Oh man, that's what really makes the movie just even way better. Just especially with that story, taking something serious and realistic that happened, and then doing adding a storyline to that. Just and just anything with like a true story just makes it way better to watch. It takes the scariness to it to a whole new level when it's real.
Yeah, especially when people can identify with being in that situation. Like if you're just a random traveler on the road, it could happen to you, right?
Of course, like I said in the beginning, with the fear, whatever you fear the most, and
So,
that's definitely one of them.
so what do you think of kind of the evolution of horror movies, where it was taken from, especially in decades past, other than a few gory movies in general, most horror movies were more kind of atmospheric. I mean, they had some gore, but it wasn't all out torture scenes. Like, we could say Hostel. Once Hostel came out, that was Eli Roth's Hostel. It kind of kick-started with the subgenre. They kind of call it torture porn, I
I
guess.
was just gonna say that, yeah, torture porn. That's what that and
And then
Saw.
Yeah. Well, I to me, Saw does not really seem like it should fit in that category. I don't know why, but to me, Saw was just different. Hostile. I mean, I know they're very similar, but in just when I watched them, I didn't associate. I don't know. I guess the idea of Saw, maybe it just didn't seem as gratuitous. Whereas with
Saw was just more clever than
yeah.
Hostel. Hostel was just yeah, capture him, kill him, gore. Yeah, that was a gore
So what do you think?
fest.
What do you think it says about society when you look at the old horror movies, like the Hammer House horror movies, and all the way up to Hostel?
Yeah, they really took a turn for the sickest.
Yeah, it's kind of
I mean,
yeah.
well, yeah, then again, it's just like what you said. You got everyone doing different. You go through the slasher. Different variety of horror movies. That's a whole new level. Someone just, I guess, wanted to take it to a whole new level to be different, which worked because a lot of people like watching that.
Well, also I think it has to do with even in the 40s, 1940s society. I mean, we weren't alive in the 40s, but 1940s society was completely different. People, I guess gullible might be a slightly offensive word to use, but I think it's accurate. I think people were more gullible. When you see something on screen, you're more easily convinced, right?
Yeah,
Like you were,
definitely.
because think about how many people were absolutely terrified with the fake effects in some of those old movies.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's so obviously fake to us, but at the time, because there was nothing else on screen, and there wasn't this desensitization to violence and horror, people kind of they just accepted it, and then we saw that through the decades. Even in the 70s, some of the really low budget movies where it's so obviously fake, but it's still enough to convince an audience. Where now we go to the 90s. If you're in the 90s, especially after the internet, you're watching some of these movies from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, you're not going to think that looks real at all. That's not going to be scary.
yeah.
So it's almost like the effects had to get better and the ante had to be upped. So well that's one of the cool things about certain horror movies, like for example Cannibal Holocaust. In that movie, the director actually went to prison for several years, I believe, for making the movie because he couldn't prove in court that he faked the deaths because
That is.
the effects were so good. I mean, since then there've been special features and behind the scenes that have come out. I mean, they impaled people in that movie,
I remember that.
and the effect they actually showed how they did it. It was quite ingenious. I mean, they used practical
And
support.
that is why practical effects beats any CGI.
Yeah, of course. But anyway, the point was at the time. I mean, Cannibal Holocaust came out in 1980. And so they were I don't know if they shot the movie in 79 and it came out in 80, but that was also what people don't know. That was actually possibly the first found footage movie because there was footage of journalists or investigators, researchers, newspaper reporters that went to the Amazon. They filmed footage and then they had the footage, and then a new group of people goes to the Amazon to find them. And it's they a lot of the movie is found footage, or some of the movie is found footage, and then also the score. I believe the musical score actually won awards because it was so creepy. It had a techno vibe. I mean, this is 1980 here. We're not
Wow.
talking the 90s. It had a
Yeah.
techno vibe in 1980. So like it was when you have these older movies, and then it was also a combination of real and fake. So I think one guy got his leg eaten off by piranhas in the river. I think they ended up cutting that scene because they were using like local villagers and things like that.
Oh
And then
wow.
for some of the torture scenes, they actually used real bodies from car accidents. They would have them, like there'd be a car accident or from the morgue, they would pay to have the bodies delivered to the scene. So when they would be cutting them open or taking out organs, some of that were real bodies.
So I see why he went to jail then, because
Yeah, because well,
that's
they would do
definitely
the
crack.
close up. Yeah, it's a very disturbing movie. I would not recommend anybody to watch it ever, even just for the
Well,
animal
I
violence
think after
alone.
talking about it now, I think all your audience is gonna want to go check that movie
Yeah,
out.
don't watch the movie. And also, disclaimer: there's some very very extreme animal torture as well, and animal mutilation. I mean, they were gutting turtles, and they really killed the animals. So when you have the combination of real and fake, that's just a very disturbing combination. So audiences didn't know what to make of it. They might have thought the whole movie was real, even when they killed all those people.
I think now that you said that, that no one's gonna want to watch the movie. So
Well, yeah, and in the court trial, if you do some research on the movie, supposedly at the court trial, they asked him to fly in the villagers to prove they were still alive. And
wow,
they did, but supposedly they didn't look the same as the people in the movie.
that's crazy.
So
That's
it's so, but again, that doesn't mean he really killed anybody. That just means they couldn't be bothered to find the right I mean, think about how complicated that is to get natives in the Amazon on a plane to go to Italy. I mean, they might not even want to go. So
yeah.
they paid whoever they could pay to find to go because so the director Rogero Diodato.
Okay.
So they made so he made this movie. I believe it's they there's also like the splatter subgenre of horror. So like a lot of gore.
Yeah, like what was that movie? Was it Dead Alive? I thought that was probably one of the most goriest movies I've ever watched. Had the parody, it had the comedy. It was over the top. Did you see that one, Dead Alive? It's about it's about a guy who
Yeah,
goes to this.
Dead Alive was Peter Jackson's movie in
Was it?
1992. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he
it
goes.
is classified as splatter horror. Yeah,
I mean, he goes to the zoo, finds his little rat, gets his grandmother, I believe, gets bitten, turns into a zombie, and then he has to take care of his grandmother, who's a zombie, who
yeah,
then bites other people. So he then takes care of a whole family of zombies.
yeah.
And
It's a
there's
very
this,
disturbing movie.
I just remember there was a scene where he picks up a lawnmower, turns it on, and just chops everyone up in his room. It was just crazy. But with the comedy, they had a little zombie baby. That was hilarious. If you guys listening want to check it out, go on YouTube, look up "zombie baby at a park," and seriously, it'll
And
make you laugh.
for those that don't know, it was also known that there were some title differences. It was also known as Brain Dead, which
Okay,
was 92, Dead Alive. It was re-released. But yeah, it's the New Zealand slapstick zombie comedy
yeah,
directed by Peter Jackson. And that's right, that's the same Peter Jackson of Lord of the Rings, for those that don't know.
check
So
that movie out. It'll make you laugh. It's funny, and if you like gore, I mean, that has the most I've ever seen.
So there's definitely outliers. You have movies throughout the decades that were very, very realistic, but for the most part, they were more fake in the past and they got more and more realistic.
Yes.
So, yeah, so some people would point to that as kind of a decay of society as well, and kind of a rise in disturbed individuals and young people. It's the same old controversy with video games, like when kids play video games, does that make them more crazy and violent?
You know that game GTA, it's just all violence, I think. I mean, I remember my friend, we were playing that game and he shot some old lady on a bench and I think his mom walked in and and took the game away from him. But I guess in her mind thinking, yeah, maybe my kid's gonna become violent if he sees him shooting an old lady on a bench, random, just I mean it. Some people that might have already disorders, I don't know. Might trigger, but I mean, it's all fake. But then again, you got those movies like you mentioned, the Holocaust movie, which some of these movies are just so realistic.
Well, yeah,
What's your take on that?
I think it's you get a mishmash. I think you have examples on all sides, so it's really impossible to say, right? You have
Yeah,
highly disturbed individuals who've never played a video game or seen a movie in their life. Like if they were locked in a cage and they became some kind of sadistic serial killer, then you have people who played all these games and then they're completely normal and so
yeah,
it's kind of like what's was it a trigger factor? So you have a predisposed group of individuals with certain psychological conditions or the propensity for psychological conditions. Would a game like GTA or horror movies, would that trigger something in them because they were already predisposed? Maybe, maybe not. Then you could also have the opposite where if they played the video game, it was almost like an outlet for all their aggression. So now they don't have to do it for real in real life.
like the movie Purge, Purge Night. Let it
Yeah,
all out,
yeah.
then you're good the rest of the year.
Oh, that's another disturbing movie as well.
Another creative idea.
So let's go over sequels and franchises because That's kind of a staple of the horror genre as well, and controversial. Some people like all the sequels, other people hate all sequels. So they think that only the first one should have been made. I mean, you have this franchises with everything. You have the Halloween movies, the Friday the 13th movies, the Freddy Krueger movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Then, I mean, even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre spawned a bunch of sequels.
So my take on all that, I think the first one obviously is the best one because you're being introduced to it's the most original one of the series. So I mean, when they come out with sequels, yeah, the studio just wants to make more money, but then the audience wants to see more Jason, more Freddy, more Michael. I mean, me too. Whenever a sequel came out, yeah, I was excited. Even though it wasn't as good as the first, you got to see more. And that's my take on that. Obviously, the first one's always going to be the best, I think.
I think most. Oh yeah, and then the Hellraisers. We forgot about the Hellraisers,
Now,
which
now that is one of my favorite because that has no comedy. It's all seriousness. That's what I like, and that puts you in the darkest atmosphere, and that's what think a true horror movie should be. You know?
well, that Hellraiser is the perfect segue into another mind-shocking topic, which is, of course, the occult. Some people believe that any kind of media that features any kind of demonic entities or evil, it's kind of taking your energy, so you end up feeding the evil of the world just by enjoying the movie because you're giving your energy to it. What do you think about that?
Huh? Wow, I didn't never thought of it that way. But
Well, that's kind of why Amish people or very devout religious or spiritual people, they're very careful to avoid any kind of negative media or influence, not necessarily because they think it's wrong for it to exist, but in their minds it's similar to kind of, smoking cigarettes or
I got you. Like a
or
sin,
doing drugs. I'm
being
not
sinful.
I guess, but it's mostly like you're exposing yourself to certain situations. Like, would you want to live next to a nuclear power plant? So it's kind of different to say nuclear power plants shouldn't exist versus saying they should exist. That's fine. You just don't want to live next to one. You don't want to be exposed to it. I think that's the attitude of certain people that believe in this idea where whatever you're exposed to, you give your energy to it. You're kind of feeding the demons, which is if you haven't checked out the Mind Shock Halloween podcast, we go over that in that podcast where kind of the very holiday of Halloween is a way to kind of worship the demons and offer sacrifice to the demons through your own energy of worshiping them. I mean, you dress up as them, you pretend to be them, and the fear energy is kind of it's bringing negativity to yourself and the world. That's one of the theories.
And I guess I'm a sinful cult leader because I love all that festival stuff.
Oh, well, a lot of people do, but a lot of people also don't really understand the history of the holiday of Halloween, which once again, if you haven't checked out the Halloween podcast, check it out. I mean, that was kind of the a lot of the pagan nature of the holiday, which supposedly some people believe it was hijacked and turned into something it's not in order to kind of participate in this demonic worship. But going back to horror movies, it's also kind of interesting because not to fall for black and white fallacies, certain movies that have so this is kind of my take on it. You could have a nuclear power plant that gives off harmful radiation, but then you also might be able to have another type of energy plant that might have negative energy, but it's properly sealed or properly done where it doesn't affect you that much.
Yeah.
So could there be certain types of horror movies that don't do that versus other type of horror movies that do that? So not to paint with a broad brush and say all horror movies are evil, but that's basically the justification of Amish people or other religious or spiritual people who avoid horror movies at all costs because of that type
Yeah,
of energy.
I totally understand that. I know some people don't let their kids listen to radio because of that also. You know, they
Really?
put dog.
I
Well,
haven't heard that. Well, what's up with that? Go into that.
well, I was listening to a radio station and there was this Jewish listener who chimed in and said that he had found was it a Walkman in his closet or a radio, and he started listening to it because apparently his parents hid it because I guess they don't want. I don't want to really want to go into like religion, but in the same idea we were talking about with the Amish, they try to steer them away from anything that could, get in their minds to make them think differently.
Yeah.
So maybe a lot of radio puts things in people's minds that shouldn't.
Or do you want to go into a crazy conspiracy where the
Go ahead.
frequency, regardless of the content, the frequency, like with the new 5G cell towers and things like that,
Yeah.
the frequency is going to be used for mind control for the masses. So it doesn't matter if you're watching
Okay.
a really, you could be watching a really good, a really like uplifting, positive movie, but it would still be affecting you negatively without your knowledge.
Oh boy.
That just reminded me of that from that story about the radio. But yeah, it's the same idea. But here's what I think you could do to combat that, because if you understand all of that and then you watch the movie knowing that, is that different? Because then you're no longer willingly giving your energy towards evil. You can understand how it all works, and if you enjoy it, understanding it, is that different? I don't know. I'm not I'm not an expert in that theory, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's if you have the knowledge of it, does that prevent you from being from having your energy extracted like a battery in the movie The Matrix?
Yeah, I don't think so.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
You think if the theory is true that there's nothing you can do if you watch the movie, you have to feed the demons?
I don't know. It's a
What if on Halloween you dress up as like a priest or a rabbi or something, and you just want the best for people? So then you're like combating the demonic energy, right? You're not giving demons energy on Halloween. You're like doing the opposite, right?
yeah, exactly.
So then you could participate without feeding the demons, right? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just theorizing here because this is mind shock, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why not?
So, can you watch a horror movie without being negatively affected?
I think so.
It's all pretty strange because humans know so little about the brain and how it works. So, like when you're watching somebody get killed on screen, what does that do to your brain? So, depending on the type of person you are, does that make you abhor real violence even more because you're kind of seeing the effect it has and it's all horrible and terrible, so you realize it's bad more? Or when you see that on screen, are you like, oh, that's fun, that's cool, that's awesome, I want to do that?
No, no. I mean, you got to go into knowing it's fake. I mean, when going into the movies, know it's fake.
Well, I'm talking
But
about your subconscious.
oh, your subconscious.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be really sick to go into a horror movie and saying, "Oh, I can't wait to do that."
Well, no, no, no. I'm talking about subconscious. So normally, you'd, of course, you wouldn't be thinking that. But is that the effect that happens like without your permission? Because if let's say you're a normal, good person, you watch a horror movie for fun, but now you have these images in your brain, in your subconscious, that even you're not thinking about them, but they're just there because you watched all these horror movies.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess if a kid watches a horror movie, I mean, that would still in their mind, forever. Like It the Clown did for me when I was a little kid.
Wait, are you so
I,
you're still scared of clowns?
I'm not afraid of clowns, but watching that movie as a kid, I don't know why, but every dream I had after watching that movie, it must have distilled in my brain permanently because even if it was a happy dream, it would pop up out of nowhere with a balloon and say hi in a corner somewhere or in a window of a house.
Sort of like that Mortal Kombat pop up. Hoopty.
Yeah, seriously, just like that. He would,
That's funny. So that was
it's
Pennywise. So that's what happened
yeah.
with
So as a
Pennywise.
little kid watching these horror movies, yeah, I had nightmares. So, but yeah, I guess subconsciously it just gets stuck in your head. But seeing them now as an adult, watching them, I just know these are fake movies, and I think the more realistic and the more the scarier the movie is, I just applaud it. I'm like, yeah, that looked great. Not like, oh my god, I want to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, let's finally do the rundown. This is what a lot of people have been waiting for. So, what are your top horror movies of all time recommended for the Halloween season this year?
The movies I recommend to watch, obviously, 1978, Michael Myers. 1970 Halloween. That was a really good one. I mean, everyone's afraid of someone lurking around, peeking in windows or something inside your house that you don't think's there. Let's see that one. I really like Sinister with the atmosphere of that movie. That was really creepy. That was a good one.
Talking about the 2012 horror
Yeah,
movie with Ethan Hawke. Yeah.
yes, not the sequel, the first one.
Yeah, that one did definitely did have a creepy vibe.
Let's see. I believe it was The Conjuring 2. I believe it was one of the PG-13 movies that I really liked. I don't really like PG-13 horror
You
movies.
you actually like The Conjuring 2 more than Conjuring 1?
I believe The Conjuring 2 just had a lot more. Um,
Huh. Yeah, I remember that one a little I found a little bit more tacky, but I did like the first one more.
the
But that's
first
just
one,
me.
yeah, it was. I liked them both, but the guy was it Juan, director of that.
James Wan.
He really did a good job with those movies, keeping you in the atmosphere. I really liked. I liked the new Halloween, though. I just didn't like the comedy they threw in there that took you out of the atmosphere. So I'm not gonna put that on my list. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course. Freddy Krueger, the first one. Hellraiser. Let's see. Trying to think here.
You're
It,
forgetting your number one most
of
recommended
course,
movie.
it Pennywise. I mean, I really like the newer ones that they just came out with. But too much CGI that took me away
Yeah,
from the
Stephen King.
scares, man.
Yeah, the new It movies. I haven't been able to watch them because of the
It's just
CG.
like the second one. I really, I enjoyed it. It was entertaining, but too much comedy and the
The original, yeah,
CGI.
the original
Too much
really was
CGI.
disturbing because I remember watching that as a kid on TV, and it was just there's just something about it.
You know, was it Tim Curry? Was that the one who played it? Yeah, he just added so much like creepiness to that character of it. Yeah, so another one, probably number one movie on my list would definitely be Pumpkinhead, man. The practical effects in that movie, the creature, the creativeness of making that creature. I mean, that was by far one of the creepiest when I was a kid.
And you know what's strange? A lot of people have not seen Pumpkinhead. It's somewhat more obscure because everybody, of course, always talks Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on
Hmm.
Elm Street, Hellraiser. Pumpkinhead, there was actually actually I think four movies in the Pumpkinhead series. But
Yeah, there were quite a
the
bit.
original Pumpkinhead came out in 1988 starring Lance Henriksen, who's been a staple of the horror movie genre as well. He's been in a lot of horror movies. But yeah, if you haven't checked out Pumpkinhead, that's a pretty good one. So on your list, you got a mishmash of famous and slightly less famous movies. So let's get a little bit more specific now. What are your top movie franchises? If someone has, let's say, 20 consecutive hours to spend on Halloween watching a movie series, which would you recommend?
I love Halloween, man. The Halloween franchise is good. I'm sure you would choose Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I'd have to go with that one. Although I am partial to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. I mean, I just like all of them. I can't even.
Yeah.
The newer ones aren't that great, but they're still kind of fun.
Yeah, no, they're fun. And let's see. Hellraiser. I liked Hellraiser, man. That was really creepy to me when I was little.
There's quite a few movies in the Hellraiser series. I mean, have you seen all of
I have, and a
them?
lot of them were garbage. Man, I don't know what happened to that series, but the first three were the best. Then it's just, I don't know, different directors, different writers, people in control. I just went downhill with that. But
So there's 10 Hellraiser movies. You
yeah,
got
10.
Hellraiser, first one came out in 87. You had Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, which came out in 88. Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, 92. Then Hellraiser Bloodline, 96. Some people actually, I think, group Hellraiser Bloodline is still pretty good. That was, so Clive Barker was, of course, behind Hellraiser, so he was involved with only the first two movies. But Peter Atkins wrote the second and the third and the fourth. And
And
then you had a bunch of new people brought in. You had Hellraiser 4 Bloodline, Hellraiser 5 Inferno, which came out in 2000. Then you had Hellraiser 6 Hellseeker, which came out in 2002. Then you had Hellraiser 7 Deader, which came out in 2005. And then also, it was all from the same director. So Hellseeker, Deader, and Hell World were all Rick Boda. And Hellraiser Deader and Hellraiser Hell World both came out in 2005. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before, where you had two movies of a series come out in the same exact year. That's kind
Yeah,
of weird.
I don't know what was going on with that series towards the end there. I know they did like a little reboot. They even
Yeah,
changed the guy who
well,
played Hellraiser.
they had Hellraiser 9 Revelations, which came out in 2011, and then recently Hellraiser Judgment 2018. So, would you recommend? So, what's your number one recommended series? It would be Halloween, and then you'd go Hellraiser with the disclaimer that the last couple are not so great.
Trying to think of a really good series that was good all the way through. Like all the sequels were good. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you want a really sick, disturbing series to watch, if you just want a nice, if you want a paranormal, creepy one, I'd go with the Conjuring series. You know, that's more up to date.
Are there only
Uh,
two? Aren't there only two movies in that series, or did the
no,
Annabelle? Did the
there's the
Annabelle?
con.
Did the
Yeah,
Annabelles tie in?
yeah, it's all tied to Conjuring universe. It's got Annabelle. You got the Nun. They're coming out with some more. Insidious was also a good series.
I only really liked the first one.
Yeah, I think I did too. And then when
That one
that
was
one,
pretty. That one was surprisingly creepy. If you're an adult who kind of used to watch horror movies, but you don't watch horror movies so much anymore, I'm gonna save the best for last here. My recommendation for top recent films are Ari Aster's movies, Hereditary and Midsommar, which Hereditary came out in 2018, and that one was a little bit of a shocker because it was pretty solid, very solid horror movie, reminiscent of bringing out that vibe that has kind of been missing from horror movies for a while.
that did do a great job at that.
Yeah, just very, very disturbing with very solid acting. And let's take a big U-turn because we forgot to mention the Leprechaun franchise.
Well, see for me, Leprechaun and Chucky are in that like too
Oh,
much
Child's Play. We forgot about
child's
that
play. The
franchise.
first one
Yeah.
was good, but then it just got. I mean, I really like Bride of Chucky. I just like, even though it was a lot of comedy, I just like the score, the soundtrack, all that stuff, man. Rob Zombie. I like Rob Zombie, Clive Barker, man. I love their way I just like the atmosphere they put you in. Those two.
My note on the Child's Play movies, I've watched a couple of them. I think I stopped around Seed of Chucky, maybe. I forget where I stopped.
Oh yeah, that's when it got.
But
That's
yeah, no,
Them
I
are the
actually but
worst.
what's funny is it was almost like a glutton for punishment type of movie series for me because I actually didn't even like the first one. I mean, you could call that a blasphemous statement in the horror movies, for horror movie fans, but
Yeah, you probably
I
did.
didn't really like any of them.
Yeah, no, I like the first one again. Like the first of the franchises, you know, they're introduced to this new something new, you know, and that's why
Yeah.
the best of the series. But yeah, it definitely took a weird turn, you know.
I
I
would actually
mean,
recommend the Night of the Living Dead series as well, the Living Dead series. You had Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and I believe what was the latest one series?
you mean in the zombie genre?
The Night of the Living Dead series.
Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. I think Day of the Dead is the newest one, though.
Yeah. Oh no, it was Land of the Dead and then Diary of the Dead and
Got
then
you. Yes,
Survival of the Dead. I actually haven't seen Survival of the Dead.
I don't think I have either.
That's George A. Romero, so that would be same director. Oh,
Yeah,
I got something new to watch for Halloween.
what is
I didn't even watch the whole series that I'm recommending.
it?
So here's what happened with George A. Romero. So he did Night of the Living Dead, and then he did Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. And then when that was remade in the 90s and the 2000s. But then Romero came out with Land of the Dead.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a lot of zombie movies there. A lot of zombie movies. Now, as far as vampire movies, we didn't really talk a lot about vampire movies, but I liked Interview with a Vampire.
That was a great movie, man. I love that one.
Do you like that whole series? You had Interview with the Vampire. So that's obviously that was based on Anne Rice's novels.
Forgot to
So
mention Dracula.
Queen of the Damned was the follow-up movie.
Oh, okay.
I actually liked Queen of the Damned. I think I'm one of the few. I thought it
No,
was
I
pretty
like that
cool.
one also. But one of my favorite vampire movies, that hands down, Bram Stoker's Dracula with Keanu Reeves. That was
I actually did not like that one, the Tim Burton.
really. Ah, the way they made Dracula look at the end, and the actor who played
Oh, the
Dracula.
visuals. I thought the visuals were really, really good. I was not a fan of the movie as a whole. I thought it was just too slow. The 92 Dracula movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, that's with Keanu Reeves, Gary Oldman, and Winona Ryder and Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, so, yeah, well,
Oh, Candyman.
oh, Candyman. Yeah,
That my brother would throw me in the bathroom, lock the door, turn the lights off, and continuously repeat Candyman until I would scream bloody murder and try to break the
yeah.
door down. That gave me nightmares when
Yeah,
I was a kid also.
the original Candyman had a pretty creepy vibe as well. I remember watching that as a kid. That one was freaky, man.
I think there was a scene in that where they talked about a kid being murdered in a bathroom, and that distilled in my head that scene. It just was just creepy, man.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I met all the actors who played these, growing up at convention. I confronted them and I even told them, man, you scared me.
did you beat him? Did you beat him up? Did you throw a punch
Uh,
at him?
Especially Candyman because he's like a foot taller than me.
Like you ruined my childhood.
uh,
What did you think about the Final Destination films?
okay, so I love the ideas that were in those movies. You know, the one that really freaked me out, obviously having bad eyes, just the scene where one girl I believe is getting laser surgery and the thing burns her eyeball. I
Oh, that's
just
rough.
yeah.
Yeah, that's rough.
No, but I just, every time a new sequel would come out, I'm like, all right, what are they gonna do next?
Yeah.
Entertaining. That's what they're very entertaining movies. Not scary, but entertaining.
Yeah, so we took a stroll through a bunch of different movie series and the evolution of horror movies throughout the years. What do you think is next for the horror genre?
Well,
Or
I
you
mean,
think it's just gonna
where
be
it's
or you think it's just gonna be reboot after reboot like we've been seeing?
yeah, because they keep making these horror movies PG-13. They're throwing too much comedy in there, too much CGI. I'm starting to see, and then pretty soon there's gonna be no practical effects at all. I mean, CGI, I guess, is getting better, but still, like for instance, It Too that just came out. I mean, if they used practical effects in that, it would have just made more of an impact.
Oh, I'd probably watch it if they did. Otherwise,
I
I'm
know.
probably not going to.
Where it's going. I mean, you got Rob Zombie. He's still trying to make really dark, gory, rated R movies, which I enjoy. But yeah, it's just
You think we're gonna see? So we saw like a little bit of a revival of 3D. 3D actually used to be big a few decades ago, and then it kind of just went away for some
well,
reason, and then it came back, and now oh, you know what? What movie I would recommend? Piranha. Piranha was a funny recent movie which kind of had some of the old throwback cliches, and it was pretty funny.
yeah, that was funny and gory.
And but yeah, as far as 3D goes, they also had smell-o-vision at one point. So,
Well,
you think it's going in the direction of virtual reality where you kind of put on a headset and you kind of experience a three-dimensional horror movie in a virtual reality or augmented reality setting as opposed to just sitting there and watching a 2D screen?
I would definitely say that's where it's gonna go. Because I mean, you're gonna be fully immersed in the atmosphere, which
I
will,
could see a lot of people going crazy. Oh, you know what movie we forgot to talk about and movie series? The Ring. Because
oh,
the original Ringu, supposedly people were committing suicide after watching that movie in
you
Japan.
know, yeah, that movie. You're right. I totally forgot to mention that one. There's just so many movies out there, but yeah, The Ring was definitely a very scary one for me too. I enjoyed
What do you
that
think of
one.
the newer ones? The newer ones are pretty not so great.
No, I didn't like those. I didn't like those at all. But the first one
The
definitely.
last one, I think it was Rings with the guy from The Big Bang Theory and Roseanne.
Yeah, no, I didn't like that one.
Yeah, that one was a bit painful. But
Oh man,
yeah, the original. So now that we mentioned the Japanese movies, yeah, some people. I think you're mostly American horror movie buff, but some people really like the Japanese and the Korean horror movies because they're so extreme in concept
I'm
and
not gonna lie. you know, they're I'm pretty sure they probably have I mean they have really good horror movies, I heard. I mean, I saw a couple. But yeah, they're pretty sinister, those Japanese
Yeah.
filmmakers.
Very devious. I mean, when they
Yeah.
do gore, it's really well done, but they don't rely on it. It's just some of the ideas and the supernatural elements are also quite bizarre. So to round out our horror movie talk, it's kind of I think supernatural or horror storytelling was kind of always part of just human lore, just the way you talk about the boogeyman or monsters in the woods. It's kind of it's always kind of been part of the human psyche, and we could even start talking about genetic memory, where if our ancestors were thinking about scary things in the woods, those are the stories they would tell around the fire. So it's kind of like we're just repeating the process, except we have new mediums to do so, like books, video games, and movies, where you can kind of tell some of these same scary stories in new ways. Because if that is in your brain anyway, it's kind of just an outlet for it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I forgot to mention, when you got into the VR horror, you know, thinking that's where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
I remember watching an episode of Black Mirror. I don't know if you got into that series. There's an episode, I think season 3, episode 2, I believe it is, where this guy travels the world making money on this app. The app, I think, tells him what to do. There's what it's about is it's like a VR. You put on a headset, and they put like a chip in the back of your neck, and you're fully immersed in like this realistic haunted house theme. It just shows you what it could go, where it could go, and I think if you watch that episode,
It sounds like it's too scary for me, man.
no, you know what? You know what it does? The chip in the neck, I believe, put tapped into his brain and found his fears. And the idea of the game is you have to survive. You have to without trying to want to
I wouldn't
say
be
that.
surprised if they already have that technology right now.
Seriously, you have to check that episode out because it just makes you go crazy. And then if I forgot what it was called, but Black Mirror, I believe season 3, episode 2. I
Yeah,
enjoyed that one.
very scary stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did the rundown of the horror
All
movies.
right.
In the comment section, feel free to agree or disagree with our picks, and you could also leave your favorite horror movies and what you think of some of the occult and esoteric ideas that watching and enjoying horror movies is actually giving your energy to demons. Lots to discuss on MindShock. We hope you enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast and have a happy and safe Halloween out there. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to share the podcast across social media platforms and like our Facebook page. You could also check us out Twitter, Reddit, and Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.
And Brad Michaels.
We'll catch you guys next time.